Man, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another episode of EOS. It's 1090 Jake, man. I'm rocking with y'all and y'all rocking with me. And for this video, we're going to be speaking on a Florida boy that gunned down a sheriff's deputy after refusing to go back to jail. Sunday, March 12th, 2023. A Pinellas County Sheriff's deputy was dispatched at 6:15 p.m. for an auto burglary in St. Petersburg, Florida. Arriving on scene, the deputy spoke with a witness who gave a detailed description of a suspect who he observed checking yards, houses, and looking into parked vehicles as he walked by. The witness followed behind the suspect, watching as he broke into a neighbor's Ford F-150 and began stuffing his pockets with items from inside. The witness was even able to record the suspect on video as he exited the truck. A sheriff's corporal arrived nearby to help establish a perimeter when he saw the suspect running alongside a church fence. With his police lights activated, the corporal radioed in for nearby deputies, and within 1 minute, Sergeant Jacob Viano and K-9 Deputy Matthew Aiken, along with his K-9 Taco, arrived on scene. The K-9 began tracking the suspect's fresh scent from the area he was last seen running. They'd follow the K-9 into a heavily wooded area when the dog alerted to a black slide belonging to the suspect. Continuing on, they'd find themselves behind a home on 60th Ave with a 6-foot chain link fence with horizontal slats that prevented them from viewing the backyard. Deputy Aiken lifted the K-9 over the fence before jumping over himself as he continued tracking, while Sergeant Viano followed 25 feet behind. That's when Viano heard Deputy Aikens yell, "Get your hands up! Get your hands up! K-9, stop! Stop!" 3 gunshots came from the side of the house. 1 bullet piercing the deputy's wrist, breaking the bone before exiting through the other side. A second bullet would enter his right thigh, pushing through flesh as it continued out the back of his leg. And the final bullet would strike the deputy's neck, making its way through a maze of veins and arteries while causing temporary paralysis as the deputy fell to the ground unconscious. The suspect then turned his gun on Sergeant Viano, firing another 3 shots as the sergeant dove left, dodging the gunfire while drawing his own weapon. The sergeant then pushed forward towards the suspect while firing 5 shots in his direction. 3 of those bullets would collapse the suspect, while the K-9 was latched to the suspect's arm. The sergeant would then call in for an officer down as he observed Deputy Aiken on the ground with his gun still in his holster. He'd been ambushed, gunned down, and the clock was now ticking as he was transported and rushed into emergency surgery. The 23-year-old suspect was identified as Zion Bostic and pronounced dead at the scene at 7:26 p.m. A bullet had grazed the back of his neck, another bullet his left shoulder, but the one that killed him was the one that was fired into his neck. Coincidentally, the same area he shot the deputy. Zion had been armed with a 9mm Taurus handgun that had been stolen from a vehicle the previous year. Additionally, a .380 Ruger was found in his front right pocket with an extended magazine. This gun had also been stolen from a separate vehicle. Within his backpack, deputies would find ammunition and magazines for both weapons. At only 23 years old, Zion's criminal history was extensive. He'd been arrested a total of 18 times for a total of 34 felonies and 24 misdemeanors since 2015. In 2017, he'd served roughly 9 months in Florida State Prison for carrying a concealed handgun. Soon after his release, he'd be arrested again on drug charges, placed on probation, and a violation would result in another 15 months in prison. But even then, after 2 short prison bids, Zion would find himself arrested only 5 months after his second release, now facing burglary charges. Bonding out of jail, he'd only last a month before being arrested for driving with a suspended license and fleeing and eluding. Given a mandatory court date, Zion would buck court, resulting in a warrant for arrest, which was active at the time of his death. His death sadly wasn't the first in the family, as his father had passed away in 2003 when Zion was only 3 years old. His little brother Isaiah who went by the name Zay, had been illegally driving a car full of teens when he hydroplaned and lost control. He struck a tree and firefighters had to free Zay from the wrecked car. While all 5 teens would initially survive the crash, 16-year-old Zay would die from his injuries a week later. Sheriffs interviewed Zion's mother after the shooting incident, and she stated she was aware he'd missed his recent court date and was facing up to 5 years in prison before his death. She further stated to deputies how Zion told her multiple times in the past he wasn't going back to jail, and sadly, he lived up to those words. The wounded deputy survived the shooting and could be seen leaving the hospital only 3 days later as supporters cheered him on. Physically, it's unclear if the gunshot to the neck is still causing a temporary paralysis, as on video, he can still seem stiff. Bullet fragments were removed during surgery, his broken wrist had been casted, and he'll have a long road to recovery ahead of him. But the sheriff's department remains hopeful he'll be able to work again. The sergeant who killed Zion was found justified in doing so and has been credited with saving the deputy's life. Now this case is a tough and important one for a couple of different reasons. A lot of times, if you've ever been incarcerated, you'll hear people say, "I'm never coming back." And a lot of times people are exaggerating, but there's a very few amongst the entire population that are willing to die before experiencing what they've already experienced incarcerated. Whether it was inhumane conditions, violence from the inmates, we don't know. There's pictures of Zion, he's holding a snake as he's taking a picture through JPay. And I mean, he was released from prison on community, which is, it's a housing level. You got max custody, everybody knows about. In Florida, you got closed custody, which would be the highest, where you're not locked down in a cell 24/7. Medium, low. He was community, which means he could go outside of the gates and work. So it would seem he wasn't getting into trouble in prison. That's most likely how he was able to access a snake. And he did very short amounts of time. But he was facing more charges. And if he had been arrested for what he died for, that's an armed burglary. He was breaking into vehicles with 2 handguns on him, and he had just been released in 2022. Under Florida law, there's a PRR, the Prison Release Reoffenders Act. Within 3 years, if you commit certain felonies, they enhance the punishment. It just so happens an armed burglary is punishable by life, meaning if he hadn't shot it out, he would have been hit with a mandatory life sentence and never released from prison. Now I bring up the facts about his father dying and his brother dying because things like this can have an impact in a young man's life. He was only 23 years old at the time that he died. If things could have been done to prevent how his life played out, it's too late for him. But it isn't too late for some of y'all that's out there. And that's why it's important to find help, and it's important to understand how damaging things are to us early on, because they can have an effect on us for the rest of our life, or an effect that ends our life. But I'm not on here to dog Zion for what he did or how he went out. He stood on his word. Sadly, he almost killed somebody else in the process of being killed himself. It seems that the sheriff is going to recover. As you can see, that man is a father himself, and it's an ugly situation, but it's one to pay attention to, because people that are mentally unstable can crash out, and sometimes it just takes one person to reach out and have an effect on that person's life that can truly save it. But hey, leave y'all thoughts and comments in the comment section. I'm back, motherfucker, so expect a whole lot of fucking videos coming real soon. It's 1090 Jake. I'm rocking with y'all and y'all rocking with me. Till next time.